This is Gerardo Del Real with Resource Stock Digest. Joining me today is the president and CEO of PMET Resources, Mr. Ken Brinsden. Ken, it's great to have you on. How are you today?
My pleasure again, Gerardo. Thanks for having me.
Listen, I joked off air that I'm trying to figure out why you have such a light market cap, right? The market cap is not where I think it should be. And look, let's get right to it. We have a bull market, a raging bull market in the precious metals. Copper is perking up, palladium is perking up. I am of the belief that lithium is at an inflection point and that in the next 6 to 12 months, we're going to get a market that reminds everyone of the value that PMET holds and is going to unlock here over the next several quarters. And I think the lithium market is at an inflection point, and I think PMET Resources is also at an inflection point. It's clear to me, and I would love more context on this, that the company, and excuse my language and term, is hell bent on delivering multiple potential revenue streams, not just lithium. Hence the name change, right? And so I'd love some color and context on the name change and the way that you're going about methodically unlocking the value that isn't being recognized, I don't think, yet by the market, but I'm pretty confident will be.
Good on you, Gerardo. Yeah, you've pretty much hit the nail on the head there. So yeah, we've gone through the process of a rebrand, and what it's seeking to recognize is really the incredible geology that Shaakichiuwaanaan represents, to the future of the critical minerals world, not just to the lithium world. When you're looking for these hard rock lithium projects, you're looking for your classic LCT pegmatite, lithium, cesium, tantalum. And that's kind of the geo's dream. And the good news is that that's exactly what's on show at Shaakichiuwaanaan. So really significant scale and grade in each of those categories. Now, it's really rare to have all three. Often you'll see lithium with a little bit of tantalum. You might be very lucky to see, small amounts of cesium, but the scale and the geology at Shaakichiuwaanaan is just different. And
Hmm.
it has masses of scale in each of them, lithium, cesium, and tantalum. So that's what's really motivated us to focus on a bigger picture that says we're a critical minerals powerhouse, Gerardo. That's really what we are. It's not just the lithium.
You've talked in the past and recently here in news releases about defining and outlining what the potential is in economic terms of each of those. How is that coming along? And you've also been really keen to talk about wanting to partner with groups and companies that can help you target the European market specifically. I have to believe with everything coming out of China, and we talked about this last time you and I chatted, wanting to weaponize and now very openly weaponizing its control on critical metals and the business model that comes along with that, right? We're getting that. That's a new twist there. I got to believe that you have to be really, really confident in the approach that you're taking to be able to monetize these different revenue streams.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the geopolitical tension and how overt that now is getting so much more apparent. Yeah, China's an incredibly dominant player through the critical mineral sphere, and none the least of which actually is in lithium as well, cesium and tantalum to a certain extent. So yeah, I think the that's one picture to watch really carefully, Gerardo. That's going to get pretty sporting, would be my view, because of the dominance of China in global markets. As to how we respond, well, I've spoken to how good the geology is, but ultimately you've got to turn that into a mine. So our primary target is to focus on the lithium. So that becomes real with the presentation of our feasibility study, which is not too far away now, Gerardo. That's pretty close. But just to remind everyone, that's lithium only. That's the basis behind the premise for the first development for a mine. But we have these fantastic bolt-on opportunities once we've undertaken more test work, some of which has started, and of course we started to publish that in the public domain. and the economic studies that facilitate the next steps in realizing, a co-product opportunity in both cesium and tantalum. And because it's unusual to have the combination of scale and grade in each, our view would be they are going to be material to our project, but they fundamentally require more work to realize them, Gerardo. But you'll start to see more and more of that in the coming months.
I don't know how much you'll want to opine on this or share, but I have to believe if I am a Volkswagen or if I am a Tesla, if I am one of those kind of companies, I have to be looking at the metals mix here, the jurisdiction, which coincides with China doing what it's doing. And I would want to have discussions without asking you to name names. Are you having active discussions with potential offtake partners for not just the lithium? I know the feasibility study is coming. It's important. I'm excited for it. It'll provide a window, but there are other high value metals, obviously, here that I have to believe companies are keen to target.
Yep, that's true. Yeah, that is true. So you've seen the deal with VW and PowerCo, and that was motivated by a pretty consistent view across industry downstream in the lithium world. It says we need to diversify our supply base, but in particular, it would make sense to access projects and product offtake that is readily accessible for North American and European markets. And that's what's really motivated the relationship between VW PowerCo and ourselves. By the way, really happy with that relationship, and we firmly believe they're going to be a great partner to our project. But it doesn't stop there. There is other players in our industry, who are focused on very similar issues. They all suffer from concentration risk through the Chinese supply chain. So let me give you an example. Actually, the Koreans are a really good example because they're already very heavily invested in North America.
Right.
Several battery making facilities, several cathode making facilities. They've really dived in deep. But it's fair to say they are exposed to the Chinese market because the truth is, for most cell makers, a lot of their value-added raw materials are coming out of the China supply chain. So they think about diversification of that supply chain, a level of localization, and that's why Quebec and Canada, more broadly, are seen as a really logical jurisdiction to be looking out for key projects. How do we feel that? Well, basically that comes through consistent and we would argue, solid engagement with those players downstream about what the future of our project can look like. And it is absolutely our intention to continue with that engagement. That is, a very logical path to pursue. Because of course we need more customers, and ultimately we have to finance the mine development. When you think about a big project like ours, the logical pools of capital that are fundamentally going to help and be constructive to our development are key players from within industry, but now also governments.
Mm.
Governments are interested for all the reasons you alluded to earlier, Gerardo. There is sensitivity in Western economies about their exposure to ultimately to the Chinese supply chain. And it's in their interest to further diversify their economies as well. That's why you're starting to see some interesting moves in, especially in the US, but it's also happening back in our, my own country, back in Australia. I know it's happening here in Canada. Everybody's focused on trying to ensure that we get the right projects into production, and governments, at least on the face of it, are prepared to lend weight to that.
There seems to be a newer sense of urgency than there was
Well,
in the past by governments, right? How is PMET taking advantage of that as it relates to the permitting work, which I know doesn't get the headline that people like to see, but it's so critical, pun intended, right? How is PMET developing that? And how is that coming along, Ken?
Yeah, we've been really happy actually with how that engagement has unfolded. So in our part of the world, Quebec and in the James Bay region, you have that really important relationship with the Cree being the sole First Nations in the James Bay region. They have a very sophisticated system working alongside the province of Quebec for the purpose of the progress of your project. And we've been really happy with how that engagement has unfolded. We enjoy the relationship with the crew. They're actually a fantastic group to partner with. The other piece of really good news that's emerged is the federal interaction.
Mm.
And here the feedback is actually really interesting. In essence, as per our public disclosure, the feds have said that they will happily align their approvals process to the what's called COMEX, COMEV, which is our part of the world for Cree approval and the province of Quebec. That is really good news. And actually, I think a reflection of the rhetoric that Canada's been sharing about
Mm.
trying to ensure sensible approvals processes that of course, are doing the right thing for sustainable development, but equally, they're not double dipping. They're not creating, circular loops for
Yeah.
the purpose of approval. They've just outright said to us, we will in effect match our federal approvals process to the COMEX, COMEV process. So we see that as a really constructive step because ultimately it's just helpful to the timeline that we've already published for the development of the project.
What do the next several quarters look like? I know there was a recent site visit. I've spoken to several people that were at that site visit. They all came away with what they described as a renewed sense of context of how important the project was and the potential scale of it. That's what I received as feedback, right? What comes next? How do we explain that to everyone moving forward?
Yeah, spot on, Gerardo. Thanks for that feedback. And yeah, we're really happy with the attendance too. The diversity of attendance, combination of, analysts from the banking and broking community, investors themselves. Yeah, it's really, really well attended and good feedback. What do you get out of a trip? Well, yeah, honestly, it is that. Once you're on site, you can appreciate the scale in the geology, the co-product opportunity with the cesium, staring
Yeah.
you there in the face in the outcrop. Um, and then also, I think something else that people take away is what we've already invested in site infrastructure. Our base camp, the workshop facilities, drill core sheds, access road. It's not. Let's put it this way, Gerardo. It's not a two-bit show. It's a genuine investment in the future of a very large and long-lived project. So people come away with that impression when they visit site. What else are we working on? Well, yeah, of course, you'll see the results of the lithium only feasibility study. We'll outline the development case in more detail, including bolting on those co-product opportunities in the coming period whilst we're going through mine authorization. And we're not shy about talking about our engagement with industry. That is something that we are really focused on because ultimately we see our project being, well, really because of its scale and its long life, nominally 20 years, um, but probably more if you're prepared to keep drilling. It's going to attract the right sort of partners that ultimately create a consortium approach to the development of this big project that helps underwrite industry in Europe and North America.
Exciting times. I'm really looking forward to the next 6 to 12 months. Again, I do think we're at an inflection point. Before I let you go, I have to get your thoughts on the lithium market. How you've been through this, you've done it with companies in the past, you've seen these types of markets ebb and flow, bottom, and then all of a sudden the violent turn down becomes a violent turn up, right? Where do you think we are in that process?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've actually no doubt now that the market has already bottomed, so we're through that part of the cycle. Actually, the next step is actually the demand surprise to the upside. You might
Yeah.
even go as far as saying demand shock. And there is logic as to why that's going to happen. Probably two key points to share. China's done an amazing job lowering the cost of the cells. The reason that's important is it grows the addressable market. So what does that look like? Well, that's more EVs penetrating global markets. You don't see it so much in North America, but for the rest of the world, I can assure you, sales in EVs are actually surprising to the upside. As much as some of the rhetoric in the media might say otherwise, the truth is around the
Yeah.
world, they are going nuts, and China's a big winner in that. The most important one is actually energy storage. And because the cells get cheap enough, all of a sudden it's compelling to install batteries as an alternative energy source. So why is that? Well, it's actually really simple. The world doesn't have an energy generation problem. What the world has done is build energy generation capacity to deal with peaks in the morning and peaks in the evening.
Mm.
But for the rest of the day, you've got idle capacity. While guess what? We've got an energy storage problem. All you have to do is run those generators at a higher overall level or plug in more renewables and store that energy. That's actually what's happening because it's now an economic proposition because of how cheap the cells are becoming. That demand shock is more likely in my mind, akin to sort of 2022,
Yep.
about that, or even the second half of 2021. And it's because China has already built the capacity. It's underutilized today. Cell making capacity in China, they only use about 60% of the capacity that they've built.
Mm.
Imagine if that other 40% gets switched on.
Mm.
And they will. They'll switch it on once those cells are contracted. Where are they probably going to go? Well, I'd argue into energy storage all the way around the world. So I think we can be optimistic that demand surprises to the upside, Gerard.
Fascinating times, fascinating stuff, Ken. Always a pleasure. Thank you for your time, sir.
My pleasure, Gerard. Thanks for having me.
All right. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Hey everybody, Gerardo Del Real here. If you're enjoying the content that you just saw, you can let us know in 3 simple steps. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and please share across your network and on social media. Take care, everybody.